I want to start our conversation today by taking you back to a specific moment in time. It's a moment that I think it really represents the absolute pinnacle of a certain type of, well, certain kind of industrial grace. It involves a quote, and it's a quote that has been repeated, ad nauseum in car magazines for 50, 60 years now. But I don't think people really stop to consider the weight of who said it.
You're definitely referring to the comment made by Enzo Ferrari.
I am. Now, for anyone listening who lived through that golden era of motoring or even just studies it, you know that Enzo Ferrari was not a man prone to flattery. Not at all.
Oh, no, he was
Uh-huh.
difficult. A man who viewed the automobile as really an extension of his own ego.
Exactly. He was fiercely competitive, often arrogant, and he generally believed that if a car didn't have a prancing horse on the hood, it wasn't worth the steel it was stamped from.
He had that famous line, didn't he? Aerodynamics are for people who can't build engines.
That's the one.
And that just gives you a perfect sense of his worldview. He was a purist and a very, very stubborn one at that.
Right. But in March of 1961, at the Geneva Motor Show, this man, the Titan of Maranello, he walked across the floor to the Jaguar stand. He looked at the new machine sitting there, he walked around it, and he conceded on the record, "It is the most beautiful car ever made."
And he wasn't talking about one of his own, not the 250 GT or anything like that.
No, he was talking about the Jaguar E-Type.
Or the XKE as it was badged for the North American market, yeah.
And to receive that kind of benediction from your fiercest rival, I mean,
Well, it's the automotive equivalent of the Pope telling you your sermon was better than his. It just doesn't happen.
it set the tone for everything that followed. And that is what we are diving into today. We are looking at the Jaguar E-Type. But I want to be very, very clear about our mission here. We're not just going to look at a glossy photo and talk about the curves.
No, that's been done to death. We need to go deeper. A lot deeper.
We are going to perform a forensic anatomy of this car. We are going to look at the details of details. We're going to talk about the engineering that was hidden under that skin.
And some of that engineering was, frankly, light years ahead of its time.
Decades, really. We're also going to talk about the chaotic, almost desperate story of how it actually got to that motor show in the first place. And maybe most importantly for anyone dreaming of one, we are going to talk about the reality of owning one. The rust, the heat, and the mechanical nightmares that keep collectors awake at night.
Yeah, this deep dive is really for those who appreciate the mechanical era. If you remember a time before engine covers were just big slabs of plastic.
Before electronic stability control.
Right, before cars became, for lack of a better word, appliances. This is for you. We're going back to 1961, a time when driving was a physical, almost visceral partnership between a human and a machine.
And to do that, we're pulling from a really dense technical and historical breakdown. It's titled The Jaguar E-Type, An Anatomy of the World's Most Beautiful Car. And it's a fantastic resource because it strips away all the romance and just looks at the nuts and bolts.
Which I'd argue is where the real beauty actually lies.
Yeah.
In the engineering.
I think you're right. So let's orient ourselves. We have a lot of ground to cover. We're going to start with that launch story, which is honestly more dramatic than most fiction. Then we'll get into the chassis and suspension, the very bones of the car. Then we will do a comprehensive guide to the 3 series of the E-Type, so you can spot the difference between a 1961 and a 1974 from 50 yards away.
And trust me, the differences are massive.
We'll look at the performance myths and finally the maintenance realities.
It's a full life cycle analysis, really, from birth to potential rusty death.
A bit grim, but accurate. So let's do what Sir William Lyons said. Let's drop everything and go to Geneva, March 15th, 1961. Set the scene for us.
Okay, you have to understand the atmosphere of the Geneva Motor Show back then in the 60s. Today, car launches are these slick, corporate PowerPoint presentations streamed online.
All very managed.
Incredibly managed. Back then, Geneva was the gladiatorial arena. It was where the European manufacturers, Ferrari, Maserati, Aston Martin, Jaguar, came to throw down the gauntlet, to show off.
And the stakes for Jaguar were particularly high this year.
Immense. They were replacing the XK150, which was a lovely car, a beautiful car in its own right, but it was getting a bit long in the tooth. It looked like the 1950s. The world was moving on.
And Jaguar itself wasn't the massive, Tata Motors-owned conglomerate it is today.
Heavens no. It was still run by its founder, Sir William Lyons. They called him the Old Man. And he was a stylist, a brilliant businessman, and by all accounts, a bit of a tyrant all rolled into one. He had an eye for proportion that was second to none.
And he knew that this new car, the E-Type, it had to be an absolute home run. but the development process had been, let's call it fluid.
Fluid is a very, very polite way of saying they were running incredibly late.
Chaos.
Chaos is probably more accurate. The story really centers on a Jaguar executive named Bob Berry. He was the PR manager. But in those days, PR manager also meant chief cook and bottle washer, and in this case, delivery driver. The plan was to unveil the car. It was a fixed-head coupe, registration number 9600 HP, at a fancy venue in Geneva, the Parc des Eaux Vives. But they were still fiddling with the car, tuning it, polishing it, right up until the very last second.
So instead of the logical thing, which is putting this priceless, one-of-a-kind prototype on a transporter truck, wrapping it in cotton wool.
No time for that. They hand the keys to Bob Berry.
And the instruction is basically, get this to Switzerland now.
Pretty much. And he has to drive it from the factory in Coventry, England, all the way to Geneva. Now, for the younger listener, or perhaps the listener who is used to modern European travel with the Channel and motorways, this might sound like a nice road trip.
It was not a nice road trip.
It was a nightmare. There was no Channel tunnel. There were very few motorways, especially in France.
So you're dealing with single-lane A-roads just to get out of England, then a ferry crossing that took hours.
And then the French end roads, the routes nationales, which were notorious for being narrow, poorly surfaced, and absolutely clogged with farm trucks and little Citroën 2CVs. And the weather. It was March. The weather was foul. Rain, fog.
And just to add to the pressure, he's driving the only one in existence. It's 9600 HP. If he crashes it, if a truck pulls out in front of him, there is no backup. The entire launch is canceled. The company is humiliated.
The pressure must have been absolutely suffocating. The story goes that he drove flat out. And when we say flat out in a 1961 E-Type, we are talking about sustained speeds that would land you in jail for a very long time today.
He was just hammering it.
Hammering through provincial France, in the rain, battling fog, trying to make up for lost time. He was literally racing the clock.
The source material, it's amazing. It mentions he arrived with barely any time to spare.
20 minutes. Can you imagine that?
No.
He pulls up to the venue, the Parc des Eaux Vives, just 20 minutes before the curtains are supposed to part.
And the car must have looked a mess.
Oh, it was filthy. Covered in road grime, dead bugs from France, brake dust caked on the wire wheels. The exhaust would have been ticking like crazy as it cooled down, and you can just picture the scene, right? The mechanics and detailers must have descended on it, like piranhas wiping, polishing, checking for leaks, checking the oil.
Well, Bob Berry probably went to find a very, very stiff drink.
Or three, and then the reveal. They pull the covers off.
And the reaction was immediate.
Total pandemonium. You have to put yourself in that room. Compared to the other cars on the road, the upright Rover saloons, the boxy Fords and Austins, the E-Type looked like a spaceship. It was impossibly low. It was sleek. It was, frankly, it was sexual. The press went absolutely hysterical.
And this hysteria, this immediate success, it created a new problem.
Right.
A good problem, to be sure, but a logistical nightmare.
Yes. So William Lyons is standing there watching the press swarm all over this single coupe, and he realizes we don't have enough cars. Specifically, the demand for test drives from journalists was so overwhelming that Bob Berry couldn't possibly handle it alone. Plus, people were clamoring to see the convertible, the Roadster version. Yeah. And it wasn't there. So, the old man picks up the phone. He calls back to the factory in Coventry. It's late in the day by this point. He gets hold of a man named Norman Dewis. Now, we need to pause on Norman Dewis. He is, without any exaggeration, one of the most important test drivers in automotive history. This is the man who helped develop the disc brake. He drove at Le Mans. He survived a massive crash testing the XJ13 prototype, a man of absolute steel.
And Lyons gives him a very simple, very direct instruction.
Just 3 words, drop everything. That was it. He tells Dewis to find the Roadster registration 77RW and get it to Geneva by the next morning.
Now, Bob Berry had a tough drive, but Norman Dewis had to do it all again, only through the night.
And in a convertible, with a canvas top that wasn't exactly what you'd call airtight or quiet.
Right.
So Dewis, being Dewis, just says, right, grabs a bag, jumps in 77RW, and sets off. He drives through the entire night. No GPS, no cell phones, no support crew, just a map on the passenger seat and his own incredible knowledge of the roads.
From Coventry to Dover, catch the last ferry of the night.
And then just hammers it across France in the pitch black, And there's a wonderful detail about this drive where he talks about the fatigue, the sheer concentration required.
It's a different kind of driving.
It's hyper-focus. You're doing 100, 110, maybe more, on these dark French roads, watching for deer, watching for unlit tractors pulling out of a field, the noise of the canvas roof flapping like a sail, the roar of that straight-sixth exhaust echoing off the trees. He averaged, mind you, 68 miles per hour for the entire trip. That includes the ferry crossing and any fuel stops.
Which means his actual driving speeds must have been astronomical.
Frightening, really, and he made it.
He made it.
He rolled into Geneva just as the sun was coming up. He drove straight to the Parc des Eaux Vives, parked the car next to the coupe. And Sir William Lyon supposedly just looked at him, checked his watch, and simply said, "I knew you'd make it."
Laughed thusser, no thank you, no great job, no go get some sleep.
Nope. The story goes, he just told him to go get a shave and start giving test drives to journalists. That was the era. It wasn't about corporate risk management or logistics chains. It was about passion and adrenaline and sheer grit.
It's just an incredible story. And those two cars, 9600 HP and 77 RW, are arguably the most famous Jaguars in existence because of that specific 24-hour period. It's a story that just couldn't happen today.
Not a chance. Today, the car would be in a climate-controlled container on a jet 6 weeks in advance.
It really establishes the soul of the machine right from its birth, doesn't it? But let's pivot from the drama to the substance. Why was the car worth that incredible effort? Because it wasn't just a pretty face. Underneath that stunning skin, the E-Type was doing things that its competitors, even the mighty Ferrari and Aston Martin, were not doing.
That's the critical takeaway here. It's so easy to dismiss the E-Type as a style over substance car. But in 1961, it was technologically superior to almost everything else on the road. It was a game changer.
So let's start with the very foundation, the chassis. Most cars back then, especially sports cars, were built on a ladder frame. Explain that to the listener who might not be a mechanic.
Sure. Think of a pickup truck today, they still use them. Or think of a literal ladder made of two heavy steel beams. You have two long rails running the length of the car with cross braces connecting them. That's your frame.
Simple, strong.
Simple, robust, but also incredibly heavy and flexible. It twists, which is terrible for handling. Then you build the body of the car separately, the fenders, the doors, the roof, and you just plop it on top of that ladder and bolt it down. That's how the Ferrari 250 GT was built. That's how an Aston Martin PB4 was built.
Old technology, really.
Very. And the E-Type just threw that rulebook out the window, used what's called monocoque construction.
Which means single shell.
Exactly. Instead of a separate heavy frame, the body itself is the structure. Think of an egg. An eggshell is incredibly strong because of its shape, its curvature, even though it's paper thin. In the E-Type, the shaped metal skin, the floor, the reinforced sills under the doors, the bulkheads, takes all the stress. It was vastly lighter and hugely stiffer than a ladder frame.
But there's a key nuance here, isn't there? It wasn't a full monocoque from bumper to bumper, right?
Correct. And this is a detail that gives the E-Type its unique character and its most famous party trick. The main tub, so the bit where the driver and passenger sit all the way to the back, that was the monocoque shell. But bolted to the front firewall of that tub was a separate tubular steel subframe.
This is the famous Reynolds tubing.
Reynolds 541 tubing, to be precise. For any cyclists listening, you'll know the name Reynolds. They made the high-end, lightweight, butted steel tubing for racing bicycle frames and, crucially, for aircraft structures during World War II. It's incredibly strong for its weight.
So this subframe, this sort of bird cage of tubes, held the engine and the front suspension.
Exactly. It was a space frame design, very complex, very light, very strong. And because of this clever two-part design, a monocoque tub with a space frame bolted to the front, we get the famous forward-tilting bonnet.
The most theatrical opening in the car world.
Without a doubt.
Okay.
Because there is no ladder frame underneath the nose, the entire front end of the car, the fenders, the hood, the headlights, everything, it's all one giant single piece of aluminum and steel. It hinges at the very front bumper.
So when you undo the latches on the side and heave it forward...
You aren't just looking at the top of the engine like you would in a Mustang or a Corvette. You're revealing the entire anatomy of the car. It's mechanical exhibitionism.
It looks like a pure race car with the bodywork taken off.
Precisely. Because that's what it was. The E-Type was a direct descendant of the Jaguar D-Type, which was a pure, no-compromise Le Mans race car that won in 55, 56, and 57. So when you bought an E-Type, you were buying Le Mans winning architecture for the street. You could see the tires, the double wishbone suspension, the steering rack, the exhaust headers snaking their way back. It's all exposed.
A mechanic's dream, in that sense.
For access, yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's move from the front of the car to the back. The source material we're using calls the independent rear suspension, the IRS, a masterpiece. Why was this such a big deal in 1961?
Oh, it was revolutionary. Again, context is everything. In 1961, almost every car, including previous Jaguars and even high-end Ferraris, used a live rear axle, sometimes called a solid axle.
So just picture a heavy steel barbell connecting the two rear wheels.
That's the perfect image. Simple, robust, cheap to make, but also very crude. If your left wheel hits a pothole, the solid axle transmits that shock directly over to the right wheel. The whole back end of the car shudders and jumps.
It hops and skitters around corners, especially on a bumpy road.
Exactly. And it's a huge amount of what we call unsprung weight, the mass that the suspension has to control. The E-Type's designer, a man named Bob Knight, he created this incredible self-contained cage that bolted to the bottom of the car's monocoque.
So it was like a module.
A complete module. Inside that steel cage were the differential and, crucially, the brakes. The wheels were then connected to this cage by independent control arms. So if the left wheel hit a bump, it could move up and down on its own. The right wheel stayed perfectly planted on the road.
That sounds completely standard today. Every car has that now.
Today, yes. In 1961, for a sports car, it was a revelation. It meant the E-Type had a ride quality that was almost limousine-like. It just flowed over bumpy British B roads. It didn't crash and bang like its rivals.
And there was a clever detail in how it was designed, wasn't there?
The cleverest part, and this is for the real engineering nerds listening, is that it didn't use a traditional upper control arm to locate the wheel. It used the drive shaft itself as the structural link to hold the top of the wheel in place.
Talk about elegant efficiency.
It was brilliant. It saved weight, it saved space, it saved complexity. And to prove just how good this design was, Jaguar used this exact same fundamental suspension architecture with minor tweaks and updates from 1961 all the way until 2004.
40 years.
Over 40 years. It was in the XJ sedans, the XJS Coupe, and even the Aston Martin DB7, which was based on a Jaguar platform. That is a 40-year lifespan for a suspension design. It's absolutely unheard of.
You mentioned the brakes were inside that cage as well. This brings us to the famous, or maybe infamous, inboard brakes.
Yes. The feature that owners love to brag about at car shows and the mechanics absolutely love to curse.
Let's explain the concept first. Normally, your brakes are right there at the wheels.
Right, outboard. You take the wheel off, you see the big brake disc, the caliper, easy. On an E-Type, you take the rear wheel off, and you just see the hub and the wire wheel splines. The brakes are moved all the way inboard, mounted right up against the differential in the very center of the car.
Why on earth would they go to all that trouble?
It all goes back to that term, unsprung weight. We touched on this, but it's vital for understanding the E-Type. The suspension's job is to control the weight of the wheel and tire assembly. If that assembly is heavy, because it has a big iron brake disc and caliper attached to it, it has a lot of inertia. When it hits a bump and flies up, it's hard for the spring and shock absorber to stop it. When it comes back down, it slams down.
The tire loses contact with the road for a split second.
Exactly. By moving the heavy brakes to the center of the car, they became sprung weight, part of the chassis, which is supported by the springs. The wheels themselves became much lighter, so they could react faster to bumps, keeping the tire in constant, perfect contact with the road.
It's pure, unadulterated racing logic applied to a road car.
It is. It's why the car handles so beautifully and rides so well.
Yeah.
However...
I was waiting for the however. Here comes the reality check.
Here it comes. Imagine you are a mechanic in, say, 1975. A customer brings in his E-Type with the squeaky rear brake. On a Ford Mustang, you whip the wheel off, you pop 2 pins, slap in new pads, bill them for an hour, you're done.
Simple.
On an E-Type, the brakes are buried deep in the middle of the car. They're surrounded by hot exhaust pipes, by all the suspension arms, by the differential cage itself. You can't even see them properly, let alone get a wrench on them.
So what do you have to do? How do you change the pads or the rotors?
Well, the official Jaguar workshop procedure, in many cases, involves dropping the entire rear suspension assembly out of the car.
The entire cage.
The entire 300-pound unit.
Yeah.
You have to put the car on a lift, unbolt the cage from the body, disconnect the prop shaft, disconnect the brake lines and handbrake cables, and then very carefully lower the whole thing onto a special dolly just to change the brake rotors.
That sounds like a 2-day job and a very, very hefty bill.
It is the classic perfect trade-off. Engineering perfection for performance versus a maintenance nightmare in reality. But I'll tell you, when you're driving it and that rear end just soaks up a nasty mid-corner bump without upsetting the chassis one bit, you forgive the engineers. Usually.
Okay, so we've established the foundation. We have this incredible chassis, this world-beating suspension, and advanced brakes. But now we need to talk about the evolution of the car itself because the term Jaguar E-Type is actually very broad. There were three distinct series over 14 years, and they are very, very different
Oh,
cars.
this is crucial. Crucial for anyone thinking about buying one or even just for appreciating them at a show.
Mm.
Because to the untrained eye, they all look sort of the same, but the difference between a Series 1 and a Series 3 is like the difference between a surgeon's scalpel and a blacksmith's sledgehammer.
Let's start with the scalpel then, Series 1, the original.
Series 1 runs from the launch in 1961 all the way to 1968. This is the car Enzo Ferrari saw. This is the purest form of the design, the one that purists and collectors value the most.
So if I'm at a car show, how do I identify it visually? What are the key tells?
The number one easiest tell is the headlights. On a Series 1, the headlights are covered by these beautiful clear glass teardrops that follow the curve of the fender perfectly. It's incredibly aerodynamic and just gorgeous.
Like a clear fairing.
Exactly. Second, look at the mouth, the air intake at the front. It's a small, delicate oval shape. And finally, look at the lights. The turn signals at the front and the taillights at the back are slim little chrome strips mounted above the chrome bumpers.
Okay, so glass covers, small mouth, lights above the bumpers. Got it. But even within Series 1, there's a significant split, isn't there? We have the early 3.8-liter cars and the later 4.2-liter cars.
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting for collectors. The 3.8s are the earliest ones, from 61 to 64. These are, by a long shot, the most collectible and the most valuable. But, and it's a big but, they are quite flawed to live with.
Flawed how? What were the
Oh.
issues?
Well, let's start with the gearbox. The early cars used a transmission designed by a company called Moss, and the basic design dated back to the 1930s. Its biggest sin was that it had no synchromesh on first gear.
Okay, for the listener who has only ever driven a modern manual or an automatic, explain the practical implication of no synchro on first. What does that feel like?
It means you cannot shift into first gear while the car is moving, at all. If you're rolling up to a stop sign at, say, 5 miles per hour and you try to pull the lever into first, it will fight you. And if you force it, you'll get the most god-awful grinding noise crunch metal on metal
So you have to come to a complete dead stop every single time.
every time. Or you have to be a master of the lost art of double clutching, which involves putting the clutch in, shifting to neutral, letting the clutch out, blipping the throttle to match the engine revs to the road speed, then clutch in again and slot it into first.
It requires a lot of technique and a lot of concentration.
It does. And the box itself whines like a blender full of rocks. For some purists, that's part of the vintage charm. It feels authentic. But for most people driving in traffic, it's just a massive pain.
And then there's the famous flat floor. I see this in auction catalogs all the time. Exceedingly rare flat floor model.
Ah, the flat floor. This is a classic example of rarity and historical significance trumping actual usability. The very, very first cars, built in 1961 and early 62, had a completely flat floor pan in the driver's and passenger's footwells. Sounds nice and tidy, right?
Sure, clean design.
The problem is the car is incredibly low slung. If you have feet larger than a size 8, or if you're even of average height, the flat floor means your heels sit too high up. Your thighs are jammed against the bottom of that big, thin wooden steering wheel. It is ergonomically claustrophobic. It's genuinely uncomfortable for any long journey.
So Jaguar realized this was a problem pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, they got an earful from customers. So fairly quickly in production, they changed the tooling and stamped wells into the floor, little dish depressions right where your heels go, allowing them to drop down by an inch or two. It completely transformed the comfort and driving position.
But because the flat floor cars are the absolute earliest and rarest,
Collectors will pay a massive, massive premium for the privilege of being uncomfortable.
I absolutely love that logic. Yes, I will pay an extra $50,000 to have crippling leg cramps.
It's the collector mindset.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, in late 1964, we get the 4.2 update. The legendary XK engine grew from 3.8 to 4.2 liters. The official horsepower figure actually stayed the same. It claimed 265. But the torque, the pulling power, went up significantly. It made the car feel much more muscular and easier to drive around town.
And, crucially, the gearbox.
They finally, thankfully, ditched the ancient Moss box and put in a brand new, Jaguar-designed, all-synchromesh transmission. You could shift into first while moving. It was quieter, smoother, a world of difference. The brakes were upgraded, the seats were way more comfortable. So the general consensus among people who actually drive their cars is this: The 3.8 is the ultimate investment piece, but the Series 1 4.2 is the best E-Type of the classic era. It's the one you actually want to own and drive.
So that's the golden era. Pure design, but with the usability sorted out. Then we hit the late 60s, and a powerful external force enters the chat, the United States government.
The regulator.
Yeah.
And this is what brings us to the so-called Series 1.5 and then the full Series 2. This is where politics and bureaucracy start to physically reshape the metal of the car.
Now, Series 1.5 isn't an official Jaguar designation, is it?
No, not at all. It's a retrospective term that collectors came up with for the transition cars built in late 1967 and 68. The U.S. Department of Transportation was newly formed and started enforcing a whole raft of new safety rules. And their first victim was the E-Type's face.
They went after the headlights.
They decided that the beautiful glass covers over the headlights were dangerous. I've heard various reasons. Maybe they reduced light output by a tiny fraction, or maybe they'd shatter into sharp pieces in a crash. Whatever the reason, the glass had to go.
That just breaks my heart. The glass covers are the eyes of the car. It's the key to the whole look.
It totally changes the character, and it creates a lot of aerodynamic drag, too. The slippery shape was compromised. Inside, they came for the dashboard. They decided the toggle switches, of those lovely tactile metal flick switches, were also dangerous.
Dangerous? How could a switch be dangerous?
The logic, and I'm not making this up, was that in a crash, you might hit your head on the dashboard, and a protruding toggle switch could potentially puncture your skull.
Come on!
So they mandated these flat, black, plastic rocker switches that you'd find on a cheap radio. All the tactile charm, all that Spitfire cockpit feeling was just gone overnight.
So we lost the beauty on the outside and the tactility on the inside.
And that leads us fully into the official Series 2, which ran from 68 to 71. This is the fully federalized car. The headlights are now permanently open, sitting in these thick chrome bezels. The front air intake, the delicate mouth, gets gaping wide.
It looks like it's surprised or something. It loses all its grace.
It does. To be fair, they had to make it bigger to solve some overheating issues the early cars had, but it ruins the delicate lines. The slim taillights move from above the bumper to these big, blocky units below the bumpers, which makes the whole rear end look heavy and saggy.
And mechanically, I assume it got worse too.
Oh, mechanically it was a tragedy, especially for the U.S. market. The big killer was emissions regulations.
Smog.
Smog. To meet the new U.S. rules, they had to take off the 3 beautiful sonorous SU carburetors and replace them with a pair of emissions-friendly Zenith-Stromberg carbs. It absolutely strangled the engine. The horsepower dropped significantly. The car felt choked, asthmatic.
So the Series 2 is really the compromised middle child of the family.
It is. It's still a Jaguar E-Type, so it's still a fundamentally cool and beautiful car, but when you park it next to a Series 1, you can just see that it's suffered from bureaucratic interference.
Then comes the 1970s, bell-bottoms, disco, and the Series 3. The car undergoes a complete personality transplant.
A total reinvention. This is from 1971 to 1975, the final years. Jaguar looked at the market and saw that the raw, hardcore sports car era was fading. People now wanted grand tours. They wanted to cruise down to the south of France in air-conditioned comfort. So they did something radical. They dropped the iconic straight-six engine entirely.
I replaced it with an absolute monster.
A 5.3-liter V12, an all-aluminum, single-overhead cam engine that was originally designed for a stillborn Le Mans race car called the XJ13. It was turbine-smooth, whisper-quiet at idle, and incredibly powerful, but also very, very heavy.
And the car itself got bigger to accommodate it.
Yes. They abandoned the original short wheelbase chassis. The Series 3 was only sold on the longer 2+2 coupe chassis, so even the two-seater Roadster got stretched. It has longer doors, a wider track. It just looks bigger.
And you can spot it visually by the wheel arches, right?
The flared wheel arches are the biggest giveaway. They had to flare them out to fit wider tires.
Yeah.
And the front grille is no longer a simple oval mount. It's a big cross-slatted egg crate grille. And at the back, you have 4 exhaust pipes. The fantail.
It sounds like the E-Type got a bit of middle-age spread.
That is the perfect analogy. The Series 1 is the young, athletic, agile sprinter. The Series 3 is the wealthy, comfortable, powerful, older gentleman. It's much faster in a straight line, but it doesn't dance at the corners anymore. It wallows a bit. It's a magnificent cruiser, but it is not a sports car in the same way.
So we've tracked the evolution from pure sports car to grand tourer. Now I want to address the elephant in the room, the performance, the speed. When the E-Type launched, the headline number was 150 miles per hour.
The magic number.
Yeah.
The sound barrier for road cars at the time.
150 mile per hour in 1961 is like saying a car does 250 mile per hour today. It was just an insane, unheard of figure for a production car. But was it actually real?
This is one of the great and not-so-secret automotive conspiracies.
Do tell.
Jaguar's marketing department, led by Lyons himself, knew that the 150-mile-per-hour claim was absolutely vital. It was the headline. So when they gave the press cars to the big magazines like Autocar and The Motor for their official road tests, they didn't just give them a random car off the production line.
They gave them ringers.
Exactly. Cheater cars. Highly optimized, specially prepared prototypes. The engines were blueprinted, which means they were hand-built to the absolute tightest possible tolerances, far better than a normal production engine. The compression was bumped up, and crucially, they fitted special high-speed racing tires.
How do tires make a car faster?
These were Dunlop R5 racing tires. They had a much harder compound, and, most importantly, they were designed to physically grow in diameter at very high speeds. As the wheels spun faster and faster, the tire would expand, which effectively made the final drive-gear ratio taller, allowing the car to eke out a few extra miles per hour at the top end.
That is incredibly sneaky.
It was borderline dishonest, but it worked. The magazines obediently clocked 150.4 miles per hour. The headline was printed. The legend was born. But when actual customers bought their cars and took them to the new motorways or the German Autobahn, they found the cars ran out of breath at about 143, maybe 145 miles per hour on a good day.
Which, to be fair, is still terrifyingly fast in a car with no airbags and lap belts.
Oh, absolutely. It was still one of the fastest cars in the world. But it wasn't 150. The myth was more powerful than the reality.
Let's talk about the acceleration, 0 to 60 in roughly 7 seconds.
Yeah, somewhere between 6.9 and 7.2, depending on the driver and the day.
Now, I can hear the Tesla owners in the audience snickering. A modern electric SUV or even a minivan can do 0-60 in less than 7 seconds. Why does 7 seconds in an E-Type feel so different, so much more dramatic?
It's the absolute difference between digital speed and analog speed. In a modern electric car, you mash the accelerator, a computer manages all the traction perfectly, and you just swoosh forward in eerie silence. It's incredibly effective, but it's completely numb. There's no drama.
And in the E-Type?
In the E-Type, getting to 60 miles an hour in 7 seconds is a full-body workout. It's a war. The skinny rear tires are fighting for grip, squirming under the torque. The long nose lifts up towards the sky. The straight-six engine is screaming this incredible mechanical wail right in front of you. You are physically wrestling the long gear lever from first to second and second to third. You smell the hot oil in the gasoline. You feel every single vibration through that thin wood steering wheel. By the time you hit 60, your heart rate is up. Your knuckles are white. It feels fast because it involves all of your senses.
And the tires you mentioned play a huge role in the car's character, not just in acceleration. The spec sheet says 185 VR15.
185. Think about that for a second. Look at the tires on a basic Toyota Camry in a parking lot today. They are probably 215 or 225 millimeters wide. The E-Type, this fire-breathing sports car, had these skinny, tall bicycle tires by modern standards.
What does that do to the handling? It must feel very different from a modern sports car.
It makes the car playful and communicative. Modern sports cars on huge, wide tires have massive grip, massive grip, massive grip, and then suddenly, with no warning, they let go and you spin and crash. The E-Type with those skinny tires has a much lower limit of grip. It starts to slide early, progressively it moves around underneath you. You can steer the car with the throttle, it dances, it communicates everything it's doing right up through the seat and the steering wheel. It's not about achieving the absolute highest cornering speed. It's about the sensation of managing the slide.
That sounds like pure, unadulterated driving joy.
It is. It truly is. Until something breaks.
Which brings us perfectly to our final section, the reality of ownership. We've sold the dream. Now we need to administer the cold shower of reality. If someone is listening to this right now and thinking, I need an E-Type in my life, what should they be genuinely afraid of?
One word: rust. Rust is the absolute killer of these cars. And because of that brilliant monocoque construction that we praised so much earlier, rust isn't just cosmetic, it's terminal.
Explain that. Why is it so much worse than on a body-on-frame car?
On a ladder frame car, if the body panels, the fenders, and doors rust, the car looks ugly. But the underlying frame is usually still strong. The car is still safe. On an E-Type, the body is the strength. And the most critical structural elements are the sills, the big long box sections that run underneath the doors.
Right.
They are incredibly complex, multi-layered structures that are just perfect traps for moisture and mud. If the sills rust from the inside out, which they all do, the car loses its core structural rigidity.
And what actually happens when that occurs?
In extreme cases, the car can literally snap in half over a big bump. Or, more commonly, you'll see a car with bad panel gaps where the doors don't close properly. You open the driver's door and you can't get it to shut again because the whole car has sagged in the middle. We call it breaking its back.
That is a horrifying image. Just a beautiful, sagging car.
It's heartbreaking. And it gets worse. The radius arm mounts, these are the points where the rear suspension assembly connects to the body shell. It's a double-skinned metal cup that is perfectly designed to hold water. If that area rots through, your entire rear axle can try to punch its way up into the passenger compartment.
So if you're inspecting one, get a magnet and check for body filler.
A magnet won't save you. People have been covering up E-Type rust with Bondo and fresh paint for 50 years. You need a specialist, a real expert, who knows exactly where to poke with an awl and what to look for. It's the #1 killer.
Okay, what about the later cars? The V12s. Do they have unique problems?
Oh yes, their problem is heat. The 5.3-liter V12 engine is physically huge. It's crammed into an engine bay that was designed for a much smaller straight six. There is almost no airflow around the block. The underhood temperatures are absolutely volcanic.
So all the rubber bits just get cooked to death.
Everything perishes. The coolant hoses, the vacuum lines, the seals, the wiring insulation, they all turn brittle and crack. And the #1 killer of that V12 is a burst coolant hose. It dumps all its coolant in seconds, the temperature gauge spikes, and before you can pull over, you've warped the expensive aluminum cylinder heads. That is a $20,000 mistake, easily.
And there is one more detail in our source material that gave me genuine anxiety just reading about it. The wheels.
The wire wheels. They're iconic. So beautiful, so quintessentially British. But they are held on by a single large octagonal nut, the knockoff spinner.
How does the wheel actually stay locked to the car's hub? It's not just that one nut, is it?
No. The torque is transmitted through splines. These are little ridges or teeth on the wheel hub that mate with corresponding teeth on the axle hub. Over time, especially if the spinners aren't kept brutally tight, and I mean tightened with a lead-filled sledgehammer, there can be a tiny amount of play. The wheel can rock back and forth just a fraction of a millimeter, and that movement grinds down the splines. Eventually, the teeth just strip completely. You hit the gas at a traffic light, the engine roars, the axle spins, but the wheel stands still. Or, in the absolute nightmare scenario, the spinner works its way loose while you're driving, and the entire wheel just overtakes you.
You literally see your own wheel rolling down the road ahead of you.
It has happened. It is a stark reminder that this is not a modern set-it-and-forget-it machine. This is a car that demands a relationship. You have to check the splines. You have to get a grease gun and lubricate all the suspension nipples. You have to check the oil level constantly. It demands your attention.
It sounds like a very beautiful but very high-maintenance partner.
It is. But that's the trade-off. That's the price of admission for the experience.
So let's wrap this up. We've gone from the high drama of the Geneva launch in 1961 to the rusty, oily reality of owning one today. If we look back at the E-Type, why does it still matter so much? Why do we still care about a car that overheats, rusts from the inside out, and might lose a wheel?
Because it represents a moment in time where art and engineering were in perfect, beautiful balance. Today, regulations dictate the shape of cars, pedestrian safety rules, crash beam locations, aerodynamic efficiency for fuel economy. The E-Type was dictated by the wind and by one man's almost perfect eye for beauty. It's a sculpture first and a car second.
And the driving experience itself.
It's the difference between listening to music on a perfectly clean digital stream versus putting a vinyl record on a turntable. The vinyl has pops and crackles. It requires you to get up, handle it carefully, and flip the record over halfway through. It's imperfect. It's needy. But it has a warmth and a physical depth that the perfect, sterile digital version completely lacks.
The E-Type is the vinyl record of the car world.
Exactly. It forces you to be present. You can't be texting or zoning out in an E-Type. You are actively driving it, managing it, listening to its sounds, feeling its vibrations. And when you get it right, on a clear morning, on a winding country road, with that straight six singing, there is truly no better place to be on Earth.
A beautiful sentiment. The imperfection is the soul of the machine. I have one last thought for you to consider. The trade-off. Would you rather have a modern car that works perfectly every single time but has no soul, or a car that is the most beautiful in the world but might strand you if you don't check the oil? Which is the truer driving experience?
That's the question, isn't it? For me, I'll take the beautiful nightmare every time.
Thank you for taking this journey back to 1961 with us.
My pleasure. Just remember to check your splines and tighten your spinners.
We will see you on the next deep dive.